C tests. And then the next time I think I saw Astro was probably at Kennedy in 1986. After we lost Challenger. There were some reassignments, and so then I picked up the role of being the liaison engineer between Teledyne Brown as the prime contractor at Marshall and NASA KSC for the integration and the test, and then the de-integration roles at Kennedy. So I did Astro 1 when we took it apart after the Challenger accident, and then put it back together. That was all Astro 1, and then did the same thing on Astro 2. Except Astro 2, I did mission support as a payload interface coordinator at Marshall at the control center.
Cool. You did a lot. Okay, so I know with Astro 1 there was like the whole incident where like they had to figure out within 24 hours how to like figure out a new way to like kind of tell them how to navigate like figuring out where the stars are and everything, because like the computers or monitors like were shut down. Like, did you have any role in like dealing with that?
It was an interesting role. I had spec'd and purchased the first digitally transmitted camera that NASA used in ground operations. And so they downlinked images from the shuttle to, I think it was JSC, and they bootlegged them to my office somehow, and I was able to capture those images and then transmit and print them at Marshall so that they could see what was blocking the Intech screens on the DDU computers. So I had no involvement in the mission operations, just in the helping to identify what caused the failure of the units. Because as you saw on the slides, it said they overheated.
Yeah, they overheated.
Part of the overheating was caused by lint in peanut holes. It blocked the air intakes.
Oh,
That was in the photos they sent me.
That's interesting.
Yes. Should have printed an extra pair of those pictures for myself.
Yeah, that's really funny. Okay, so do you have any like core memories in when like that shaped you? That sounds weird. Do you have any core memories that have stayed with you to now?
They came out of Astro?
Yeah, it came out of Astro.
It was a project that had a tremendous sense of urgency. In fact, I turned down an opportunity to work in the project office at Astro and picked another payload that was, the management was just down the hall, the next office down the hall, but it wasn't the same pace of huge 60-hour work weeks were kind of standard. Everybody was living on overtime. It was a super time crunch mission trying to get all of the design analysis and then the hardware manufactured. So I actually picked another mission and then got tapped to do that ground support equipment on the side because they were able to pull in resources even from other project offices. And so I guess Astro was probably the first space fire drill, something where everybody on the project had a tremendous sense of urgency that I was around, and that was 1 year out of college.
Oh wow.
So it was, yeah, so I was interested in working on a mission that I had supported as a co-op student. And I wanted to stay on that mission, but I also didn't want to work 65 hours a week like everybody on Astro. And then I got sucked into it anyway.
Yeah.
I got volunteered.
You got voluntold.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, and it was wonderful because it was hardware experience. Both of the things that I was working on involved developing some hardware and then supporting integration, which stuff it ended up being either on the flight hardware or supporting the integration of the flight hardware.
Cool. Okay, so what gives you the most satisfaction of being involved in the program?
That there were so many challenges with Astro. And the team at Marshall, it was Teledyne Brown's team, just didn't understand quit. So it was the sense of what next? What is the next challenge? And then just everybody doubling efforts to do it. KSC is a different animal of a space center. It's an operational center, and it was just such a can-do environment. And in fact, it was the ideal place for somebody that was excited about the work to get to be on the job, because there was really nothing holding you back from contributing more, spending the hours it took to get the job done, finding the error. We found some serious problems with hardware on Astro even while we were integrating at KSC. We found fraudulently certified fasteners. Yes, there were the certifications on some mission critical fasteners had been fraudulently signed off. And then we had some things that were actually designed, minor changes in designs, but they were significant to the structural integrity of the mission. So I got to work all kinds of little details, like the gapping on the kinematic mounts for the payload hadn't been worked out entirely by the time we were putting the payload together. So I'm working with KSC engineers daily on whatever problems come up. It was terrific. And then to just end up inheriting the entire role and responsibility for Astro. At KSC, I went from trying to avoid it when I was at Marshall to being the lead integration engineer for the eyes and ears and the hands for Marshall at KSC a year and a half after I'd gotten down. So it was a ball, and my mentors were incredible. The mission managers, the chief engineers, and then the program project people at Teledyne. I mean, I was just a pup, and the guys I got to work for, they would say work with, but the guys I was looking up to were incredible engineers and mentors. They were terrific to work with.
Cool. So why do you think like the Astro project, like what we're trying to do, is like important, like telling the story of like Astro missions and stuff?
Oh, you mean ARP?
Yeah.
Oh. It's super Huntsville centric. And it's both a tribute to a generation of engineers, scientists, technicians, machinists that did something on a super tight schedule that was pretty near impossible. And then it's also the inspiration. That's why when Grunsfeld was on stage, he referred to it as Astro 3. I coined that phrase a couple years ago. Because his third mission is STEM and a tribute to all these people that put countless hours and all kind of sleepless nights into making that mission successful. That's why it's important, and it's incredibly Huntsville centric. Designed, manufactured, integrated, operated in Huntsville, and then rescued and restored and displayed. It's start to finish Huntsville centric.
Yeah. So in like the future, how do you want to see like the outreach for this project? Do you see like with education?
I love the way the Space and Rocket Centers worked with us and made the display eye-catching. It doesn't have the big smoke and fire noises that some of the other displays have, but it is snow white. It is that pristine white that flew in space. And the MLI and the shape of it, does not look like a model. So it has that opportunity to inspire a future generation if we tell the story right. I think in the next few years we'll mature it. We're actually looking at a rotating stand so that the payload will rotate. It needs the other two instruments on it or mock-ups, and then it'll rotate and we'll have interactive displays that will tell you what that instrument does as it comes around to view. So we want to do some virtual display stuff that makes it even more engaging than it is now, to physically have a piece of space artifact that's rotating in front of you, and then there's some media that's telling you what that item did. And of course, all of them we've got a couple of QR codes so that people want to get a little more in depth, so that people can jump off. They see it in there, maybe they just take a picture of it, and then they go home and they do a little more research on it. It's really hard to explain to people what the value of the ultraviolet instrumentation and stuff is. So you can't tell them that story in the 30 seconds that people look at a display. So you gotta have something that catches their attention enough for them to say, hey, I want to look at the link later. So we know that it's probably the best looking display in the entire museum anywhere today, including the Apollo 16 capsule, which kind of went to the moon and back. We know that all of that stuff, that's what we're doing. That's where we want to be. But the next generation of the displays and stuff needs to be that thing that draws the students in, inspires them, but educates them.
Could you talk a little bit about like the restoration process for this?
Yeah, can I turn my chair around?
Oh,
I'm very casual. So.
Oh yeah, no, you're totally fine.
So
I was kind of just curious about this.
So for the restoration project, I was sitting at my desk at Kennedy Space Center. I was chief engineer and resident manager for Teledyne Brown Engineering, the prime contractor at the time. My phone rings, but it never rings with good news.
Oh.
It's always somebody, this is broken, this doesn't fit, this didn't pass its test in the orbiter, or come out there, oh gosh, it doesn't, you can't close the payload bay door, this thing's in the way, come to the pad. So that's what the phone rings for in my office. And so the phone rings and I pick it up and there's a guy that's very animated on the other end, and he's shouting, what did you throw Astro away for? It's out here, it's junk, they're cutting it up for scrap. Anyway, So was the question just a little background on it? I'll try to not make it too long.
You can talk. There's no one after you, so you can talk as much as you like about it.
So I get this phone call, and this guy's highly animated, and he's kind of yelling at me. And I'm in my office at KSC. I have no idea who it is on the phone, so I respond back to him. And I've had a few terse conversations because of management and being in the liaison office, and I said, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. Who is this? And so he identifies himself, and he says, I'm out here at this auction house in Chase at Bentley Auction and I don't know any of the stuff he's talking about. And they've sold Astro for $300, and it's on the back of a truck.
What?
They're going to saw it up and use it for scrap metal.
$300?
It's $350, I think.
Holy cow.
That's what they bought that cruciform for. And I said, okay, I'm getting a picture. And so I started asking questions. I said, all right, look, nobody threw Astro away. I was wrong. I just shipped it back, last year or the year before. It's out at Marshall, and it's in his storage container. And he says, is this the part number? Yes. He says, well, I'm looking at the container that you shipped back, and there's something very large and white inside it, and there's a hole knocked in the side of the container. And I said, oh my gosh, you have Astro, and they have thrown it away. So I'm thinking it's a mistake. So I yank out an index card, and I wrote down 5 names of people I knew well enough at Marshall that I could say, go save Astro. They're about to go saw it up. They'll put it in a compactor and mash it up like with used car wheels, and then it'll turn into beer cans. And so I called 5 people, and Scott was one of the people that answered the phone. And I said, whatever you're doing, you got to stop. And it's like he's kind of a NASA engineer doing a test on the space station module. And he says, what are you talking about? And I said, they're throwing away Astro and something. He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. Who is this? Okay, it's Byron. It's really bad. Apparently they found it, and it's been sold as scrap metal, and it's already on the truck, and they're going to saw it up and turn it into beer cans. And he said, I don't really believe you, but I'm going to go out there and look at it. I said, you better take your wallet, because they've already bought it. So he drives out to this auction house and meets them before they can pull away with the truck and says, I want to buy this. And they have this discussion, and he verifies that it's in there. And they negotiated. They said, well, we need you to deliver it somewhere. It weighs thousands of pounds, and you can't just get it off the truck. With the shipping container, it's as big as this room in here. Not this wide, but half the width of the room. And it probably weighs 8,000 pounds. And so he negotiates, and I'm still just burning up the phone while I was doing this. Where can we drop it off? Because if we buy it, we got to put it somewhere. Marshall won't take it back. You can't put it at Scott's house. He's in a motel. So I'm trying to find somebody that'll take it. And my brother-in-law and Arab and sister made the mistake of answering the phone. And so I'm going, brrr, the same thing that I've repeated to you a couple of times. And they're like, what are you talking about? I need to store something at your facility. So they have acres of land and a big manufacturing business, and thousands of square feet indoors and acres outside. And they said, okay, you can bring it here. And so they drove the truck down there, and they tried to drop it off. And it was so heavy, the forklift couldn't pick it up. It was so big and long, and they couldn't get it off the truck. So then they had to haul it to a vehicle junkyard where they have giant forklifts to get under cars and trucks and crush them up and offload it there, because it's the only place they had a forklift big enough. So 2 miles down the road, or a mile down the road from my sister and brother-in-law's machine shop, is where they offloaded it in a junkyard. It's a beautiful piece of flown artifact, and it is sitting out there with old box trucks and beat up dump trucks and stuff, and it looks so out of place. And so I'm still trapped at Kennedy, and we're doing all these plans. Okay, it's dropped off, it's safe. We got it away from the salvage guys. And so what's the next plan? I don't know. Scott's Road taken back to KSC. Shirley Lee's still in Huntsville. I'm moving from Florida to Huntsville in a couple of months, and it's like, all right, everybody, we've got it safe. We'll get to it when I get back home. So then we come up with plans for how to get it out of the container, because it's so big, nobody can move it. And my brother-in-law says, if you get it out of that container, that 4,000-pound container, I can pick it up with my forklift, and we can stick it in the back of the shop. Well, it's already been out in the weather for years and stuff. And so we go down there, and we're trying to get a forklift operator, and it turns out he's not at the junkyard that day because he's inebriated. And he's asleep in a trailer somewhere. And so we get instructions. Me and Shirley go and beat on this guy's door. Thump, thump, thump. It's like, hey, we need you to operate the forklift. And he says, I'm not really up to operating a forklift today. I said, well, you got to pick this up because we got to get it out of there right now. So we forced a slightly inebriated, seriously hungover forklift operator to get in his truck and follow us back to the junkyard. And then we proceeded to climb around on this thing like a couple of monkeys, getting web straps and undoing bolts and stuff, because today's the day it's got to come out of the container, and it's sitting horizontal. It weighs thousands of pounds. We've got to rotate it vertical without getting killed. It's sitting, the lowest part of it is 5 feet off the ground, and now when you turn it up, the top is 13, 14 feet up in the air and you can't get near it.
Yeah.
We don't have access ladders and all the stuff you have at Kennedy and cherry pickers like they're using in here. It's just me and this NASA engineer who's luckily had worked on some hardware with me at KSC, and we're running this forklift operator yelling instructions and hoping he doesn't drop the dang thing on us when we're getting it done. And I stopped by a hardware store the day before and bought a couple of 6,000-pound yellow web straps. They've not been proof loaded, they're not certified. We're sort of betting our life on them, and we rig up a way to put them on the forks. We could put what you call a choker on the forks, put them on the trunnions, and had him rotate that thing. And God Almighty, we're standing under it, undoing the wrenches, undoing the what's called the aft clamps on the thing. So we get that open, we okay, pick it up. And then there was this pallet over, we'd set a wood pallet on the ground, and that's surprisingly didn't crush it. And so then he manages to not run over us or drop it on us and get over there and set it on the pallet. And then we're like, thank you. And I think we paid him $200 to come in on a day he didn't want to work and move that thing for us. And cash talks. And then my brother-in-law was able to come down there with a forklift and pick it up and drive it that mile down the road and put it in their shop. That is the first step that kept it from getting cut up. That is the beginning. And then it sat there on their property for 22 years while we tried to get it into Kennedy's museum, this museum, National Air and Space Museum. We're trying museums to see if they'll take it in and let us do the restoration. And most of them are no's. When I got very close to bringing it in here, I even took the curator down to inspect it, to look at it. They were impressed and they thought it was a good idea. And then the CEO changed, just like they're doing this week.
Yeah.
New CEO, all bets are off. And whatever agreement you have doesn't exist because they have a different strategy. They're going in a different direction with the board. So we start over again. And then the Kennedy guys wanted to bring it down to Kennedy. So I think they did some negotiations down there. That's a no-go. Finally, and sometimes you get burned out on stuff and it's a year because you've already tried this route and they won't have you and you can't do anything else here. And then eventually in 2020 and COVID, we're talking about it again. It's like, I've got to do something. And I called Louis Ramirez, was the acting CEO, and he was retired from TRW or somewhere, but he was a software engineer on Astro.
Oh, okay.
Now he's the CEO.
Yeah.
He goes, oh my gosh, I loved Astro. We start dropping names, and it turns out that his best friend and golfing buddy for the last 30 years was a friend of mine from Teledyne, the software engineer. And so you're always looking for connecting a dot, right? That thing that gets the door open. And he says, sure, we got nothing going on. Watch for an email in 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, I get an email from him that's instructing all of these vice presidents to reach out to me. And Dr. K. Taylor sends me a follow-up email, and that's when we started arranging for it to come in the door. And I said, it's a mess, it needs months of work, we've got to get it out of this property. My sister and her husband were trying to sell their manufacturing business, so we're afraid that we'll be stranded. Then we're forced to move it. You only want to move it once. Yeah. And so they said, you can come in over here. And I said, well, let me come and do some inspection. Let's look at access and stuff. So Kay walks out with me. We got our measuring tapes, and it'll fit through that door with forklift. And then we get to the next door where they want us to do the work. It won't fit through that one. I said, well, what are you going to do? She said, just take the whole wall down. They did. And that put us in the room, which was a cafeteria for Space Camp over in the Astro Trek building. And that was kind of the end of my role. Because we got it in the door. And then I'm working full-time, and most of the rest of the team, ARP's retired, right? Yeah. Or they're not contractors, and they got more time on their hands. And that's when we started the cleanup, stripping all the MLI off. Everybody came up, did an assessment, and said, oh my God, it looks horrible. But it was, if you don't save it, and it's cut up in pieces, it's gone. If you save it, whatever condition it's in, you can do a restoration. And so we had the curator come out, and Kay came and looked at it, and Vanita's shooting video, time lapse of us coming in the door. So we're starting to pick up a little energy. We got stuff to share. And then the guys do the cleanup on the cruciform, and it's so bad, it's so contaminated. These are pressure washer. Yeah. They stripped all the MLI and all the cables, laid them out on just dozens of tables, and started hand cleaning them. Took the cruciform outside and pressure washed it like a car. It was such a mess, but it was the right step because it had things in it. It had dirt daubers and wasp nests and spider webs and one dead mouse. May have been kind of a big mouse. And so they laid everything out and did it. We went by museum requirements for the cleaning. I don't know which kind of simple green, can't remember any details, but it was all this hand, just careful, just loving, caring for this stuff. And different people got involved, and people brought their kids.
Yeah.
Lynn brought her daughters over, and I think they were probably high school age at the time,
Uh-huh.
and let them do some of it. So they touched flight hardware.
Uh-huh.
Do you know how many pieces of flight hardware you can touch in this museum? Nothing. Apollo 16, somebody will pistol whip you if you try to reach that. Same with the spacesuits. But Astro, everybody's touching it because we're cleaning it. We own it.
Yeah.
We're in a partnership with the Space and Rocket Center, but it's our hardware. You know, we've paid for everything, all the moving, all the crane, all of the straps, all of the metals, and we're doing the work. So it was an opportunity, a very rare opportunity. And then other people brought their kids over, and they started doing a little bit of cleanup stuff. And then we had met the goal of, I think we were said we were going to have it cleaned up in 6 months, and then move it into the museum. But I wasn't sure they were serious because we've been so close so many times. And sure enough, in 2021, I can't remember the exact date, it was Mood Day, and it was raining, I think. And we wrapped that sucker in plastic and put it on the right kind of moving stuff, and headed over here and came up the ramp and right in there, and it was basically in that corner ever since. And then there have been just countless. I think the estimate was somewhere around 3,000 man hours of ARP time. So of course we not just invited those kids. Remember I said Astro 3 is STEM?
Yeah.
So we had Hunch involved. Nobody on the project knew what Hunch was but me. But I'd worked with Bob Zeke for years, Teledyne and out at Marshall. So we brought in High Schools United with NASA to create hardware. And they manufactured missing parts that were critical. We couldn't hang the Whoopi telescope without these parts. And we gave them 25-year-old vellum drawings, scanned drawings. They turned them into 3D models, and then they CAD manufactured the mounts. They did that with some brackets. There was another mount that we needed, some other hardware, and we went to the school at Hanceville. Where is Albion School?
It's in Michigan.
Lord, you never heard of these schools.
No, I'm from California, so
It's even more.
It's even more foreign.
So this is a school that trains in the trades. But you know, a trade now is computer-operated machining center or welding center, right? So these really smart kids manufactured other parts of their college-age kids, but they're doing CNC machining, and they come up and do the installation. They're in their newspaper from their school in their hometown, does it exactly what Hunch is about, and exactly what Astro 3 is about.
Oh, that's insane.
And so all of it is out there now. We've got instruments in it. And the Space and Rocket Center has been great. I guess our #1 sponsors, you know, Williams Machine stored it for 22 years. They've sold their business since then. Edwards Manufacturing built one of the big aluminum rings that you see that it's eye level to you when you're standing out there in front of Astro. That would have cost us $10,000. They made it and brought it over and installed it for no charge, just to be a part of Astro. And then Kennedy and Sons helped us load a 900-pound telescope on there. I don't know what the final bill was for the work, but the owner's daughters came in here and put hands on and torqued stuff, and you know they've nobody they've ever met has touched a piece of flight hardware, let alone flown hardware.
Yeah.
And so all of the stuff that we said we were going to do with Astro 3, my term, we're doing.
Yeah.
Now at some point in time we reached such a level of pristine that we can't have kids touch it anymore. So we got to figure that thing that excites kids. One of the other things that we did early on, even before Astro, was I had a role at Kennedy in that chief engineer's hat and the contractor, the prime contractor liaison, that I had them save thousands of fasteners, all flown fasteners. So our intent is to transfer those fasteners to educators so that students all over America, we don't care if it's all over the world, can handle a piece of flight hardware.
Yeah.
It'll need to be cleaned and certified.
For sure.
So I don't know if there's a space bug in it or not, but the idea is to just keep projecting the momentum that we have here to do the next thing,
That's
Okay,
crazy.
that's kind of
Okay, wait, one question. Do you know how it ended up just being sold at auction? Like, I feel like that's crazy. Like, why did they just give it up?
It's in the slide package out there. The politically correct answer is you go and fly a mission, and if the instruments, they all go back to who owned them. And so the piece that we threw away, the cruciform, is actually called mission peculiar equipment.
Okay.
So you could have common equipment, like the little PGSCs, the laptops, they fly all the missions, right? So they're not mission peculiar.
Yeah.
The cruciform only works for one mission, Astro 1 and Astro 2.
Yeah.
What do you want to do with it after? There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
It only works on that instrument, that radiator, and so on. So then Marshall says, we don't have another mission for it.
Oh, so they just got rid of it?
So they scrap it. And that's common.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can buy
Really?
really weird things in military and NASA
Just
auctions.
do that?
Really weird things.
Huh.
So I went to they sold it at Bentley's auction up in Chase, Alabama. Don't worry about where it is.
Okay.
And I went, we're chasing auctions at Kennedy at the same time. Now we know that the hardware is being thrown away, being excess. So we're going and bidding against scrap dealers, trying to look not like this,
Yeah.
trying to look like a scrap dealer.
Yeah.
You know, like a dude that just wants a.
Yeah, I just want metal.
I want to make a picnic table
Yeah.
out of this, right? Try to look like that, otherwise they'll drive the price up in the auction. So another example was, we bought the cruciform there, and then I'm out looking for the other pieces.
Yes.
You know, I'm into auctions. My job's up here, and they're all covering auctions down there, and we're going and seeing. There's some nerdy people buying flown hardware. They're wearing like camo cargo shorts and tank tops. And I don't know where the money comes from, but I think they live in mom's basement. And there's some guys, and I won't mention names, but they're wonderful guys.
Yeah.
But they are geek to the max.
Yes.
So we're dealing with them.
Yeah.
Have you seen this? We're showing them pictures. You know,
Yes.
you got, and some of them have them.
Really?
So then we want a horse trade. What do you trade? Well, what are you into? What do you want? And so we would horse trade things we would buy at auction.
Wow.
Like we'd buy a pallet of hardware, and we don't care about test equipment. We got some power supplies that cost thousands of dollars, and they're brand new. NASA access to McKinney, they don't know what they're doing. They're like $5,000 a piece.
Yeah.
And so we're all talking among ourselves. What do you want to do with these things? You know, when I get the call about them doing the buy, we don't care. Take them home. They're not part of the mission, right?
Yeah.
Sell them, trade them, whatever you want. So I got these 3 laptops at that same auction, trying to act uninterested. In fact, when I bought them, they were on a pallet with some aircraft ejection seats, like from fighter jets kind of thing. And it's all strapped together, and so I'm pretending to not be interested so they don't jack the price up. And then, you know, I sneak my bid in. $210. One of them's in the display case with the ham hardware out there right now. One of them was traded, I think, for a piece of the OSP, the big thing with 3 baffles sticking up. And the third one's probably at somebody's house, waiting to be traded.
That's crazy.
So we're doing this stuff, trying to snipe this stuff at auctions and save it. At the same time, we're trying to save other things, big pallets and other things that are being accessed and being bid. There was something she and I were doing one evening, and I had the high bid on a piece of hardware at Goddard. It was like $55, and somebody sniped me for $60. A multi-million-dollar piece of hardware that had flown in a shuttle 10
just
times.
Get rid of this? Why? Like, isn't it like?
They don't have another mission for it.
But like, preserve, archive.
There is a system where they put stuff on a list and they circulate it at state government level, and maybe even county, but certainly federal, state, and county level. Do you want this? And then they do this thing, a transfer, an interagency transfer. But if nobody says, I want that weird looking cruciform, and who wants it? You can take it apart and make some very cool dining tables. It's got a blade that's this big by this big. And that was actually what we were talking in the first call. If we can't get it in one piece, I'm telling them, we're going to take it apart, and then people are going to take it home until we find a museum that'll take it, and then we'll put it back together. We actually talked that. You will have the weirdest dining table in Huntsville and in Florida. You'll cover it with Lexan, and we'll keep it safe. And so that's what this same group was doing. We outfitted a module that's as big as this room, that's now up in the NASM, with a bunch of stuff that was non-flight, and just we kind of rigged what was in the module because they were wanting to put a module in the display, and it was the end of the program, and they didn't have any hardware in it. It was just, it's kind of like this room. So we all jumping through hoops and getting stuff, and I called buddies in Huntsville at Marshall, and I said, we got this module, we're going to put it up there. Have you got an experiment we can put in? Oh yeah, I've got an engineering unit glove box that we can put in. Perfect, ship it to us. And so that all got integrated like the night before it shipped up to Washington to go to the museum. And now when people look in that one up there, they say, what mission was this? Because people know their missions, they can recognize it from this experiment or something. Well, what mission? None of them. But it looked ridiculous with just empty racks. So we put stuff in the racks. Stowage containers and a few experiments and stuff. And we stuck them in there so it represents space life. Now Astro is high fidelity. Everything on it is flight spec. It's all perfect. That other thing, that was just thrown together. The one that's up there now, it's pitiful.
That's funny.
Nobody looking at it knows that it's pitiful except somebody that worked in the program. And then they go, that's not a mission. I know.
It was just thrown there.
Yeah, but it was the same people.
Holy cow.
The same group of 10 people at Kennedy and Marshall that said, we're going to preserve this.
Insane. you so much.
Have I had enough caffeine for you today?
No, that's great. This is my best interview yet. Thank you, I appreciate it. That was, yeah, well, because when you said like, oh, like, I was like, what do you do? You're like, oh, I like basically help found this, and I was like, what the heck? I was like, okay, I'm like, really.
Hey, you ought to come by the house when you're in town. You know what my kid's toy box was when they were little?
Just
$150,000 center aisle stowage container that flew multiple shuttle missions with science stuff in it. So at the end of the program, when I'm getting ready to leave Kennedy, I'm kind of tight with the mission managers and the chief engineers. And so I'm the go-to guy. Hey, this guy's retiring. Go get him a cool piece of hardware that flew on his mission. I go on a mission. I said,
That's so
and I can just check hardware out of flight inventory. God almighty. So I go down and I sign for this piece of hardware, ship it to Huntsville, and they turned it into a plaque or something, right? You see this plaque? Well, it's real. It's flown on a mission they managed or something. So at the end of the program, they said, man, it was great to know with you working down here all these years and stuff. Anything in inventory that is not manifest to fly, you can have it.
Really?
So I take this piece of paper that's called 1149, and I fill it out, and I put the part number of that stowage container on it. And I put it on a cart, and I roll it in the mission manager's office, and I said, sign it right there, buddy. And he says, you son of a bitch. I should have known you would pull something like this. I said, well, it's not manifest. Nobody wants it, and I'm taking it home. And I borrowed a pickup truck and hauled it home, and it's taller than this, about that size, about this width, and it cost $150,000. And that's my kid's toy box.
That's crazy.
Nerds are us.
That's crazy.
And everybody's got stuff in their house. Scott had his barn full and his garage full. And the girl's not here, but somebody else that was working with the group, she probably burned out. She had an aircraft, a hangar space leased for her plane. It was full of stuff, just packed full of stuff, flown hardware.
That's crazy.
We have hundreds and hundreds. We have 2 Connexes behind the museum that's our hardware. We own the Connexes. 2 20-foot Connexes full of hardware, and it's just Astro.
Wow.
We got flight hardware in one and a bunch of GSE stuff in the other one. Brand new, beautiful Connexes.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
It's now. I mean, we have to do this now. We're
Yeah.
aging out. We're, what would you call it? We're a perishable commodity. The guys that know this history know what they're looking at with the hardware, so we have to save it now.
Yeah, I think that's why it's important for us
And
to
then,
have.
then it's on you to figure out how to make that sexy to a 5th grader.
I'm a biochem major. I don't know how I ended up here, but
Okay.
yeah.
Well, see, I was a mechanical engineer and I ended up writing materials usage agreements. It describes every piece of hardware that's in a mission. I didn't know. Somebody asked me today, I said, I have no idea how I got that job. And one of the deputy directors of procurement at NASA KSC has a degree in forestry.
Forestry.
And he was a Marine, a U.S. Marine, and a mountain climbing instructor, and now he's a deputy procurement director. You have no idea. That's a piece of sheepskin,
Yeah.
right? You have no idea what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And you got to get somebody else to figure that out. You got to get that little 1 new pair of shoes a year kid from the county like I was to understand that he can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to write.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So the author who's trying to write about the Astro project, I don't know if you know David. Probably. Is it okay if we get your email or contact information?
Sure.
I'll get if you just read it. Thank you.